Hey, I'm Dave from boinaband.com and welcome to day 5 of the 7-day song on Dirty Dubstep. Yesterday in day 4, we filled out the high ends with some leads. Today, we're completing the frequency spectrum with some mid-range goodness. We'll be making a huge trancey saw pad, a more strings-esque pad to complement it, and a kind of prog housey punchy synth that will open up as the track gets closer to the drop. Let's start with that saw pad. So a combinator, name it Super Saw Pad. Since adding the buzzword super means you'll subliminally think it's even better than it actually is, and let's add a line mixer 6-2, followed by our old buddy Thor. I'll add in some notes now. Okay, so I've soloed out a nice little progression. Let's start building up the patch. Initialize it, open it up with Show Programmer, and add 2 multi-oscillators to start with. Run them both through, bring both of them down an octave, and we're going to thicken it up as much as possible without losing the defined pitch. So we're going to do that in 2 ways. Firstly, we're going to move the AMT knob up a little bit on both of them, just to detune them slightly more, and change the second one to random 2 mode. These slightly different detune modes will provide a thicker tone, so check it out, what we've got so far. Secondly, move the tune knob a notch either side of the central point on each oscillator. Just a little bit more. This slight detuning of the sound is how detune mode works in the first place, so by detuning the detuned saws, it's thickening the thickened saws. Yo dog! This results in a seriously powerful sound. It will sound much better, trust me. However, the pad isn't this punchy, so widen the attack, and the amp envelope, and the release, up by about 4 notches each. And bring the sustain all the way up to full. I like having pads that don't lose volume over time, unless you tell them to do so. If you aren't as much of a control freak, feel free to let your pads roam wild and free, perhaps marketing them as organic pads so people will buy your music over non-organic music where the pads have been battery farmed. So, the pads are starting to sound more like pads. However, there's a lot of high end missing. Let's remove the filter. And that opens it up nicely, but it could still do with a little bit of high end. Fortunately, there's a little trick I know how to do this. Let's turn oscillator 3 here into a noise oscillator and run it through to filter 2 this time. Press the other arrow here as well to let it go into the amp envelope. And if we take a listen, perfect! Not really. It's much too loud at the moment. So, firstly, we're going to add a state variable filter on a high pass mode, bring this frequency to just below about 3/4 of the way around, and then in Thor's mixer, well, I'll take a listen first. Let's cut out that low end, but in Thor's mixer, because it's still much too loud, we're going to bring it right down to about minus 20 decibels. Now take a listen. Take a listen without it, and with it. This just adds that airy top end to the sound. And that's Thor taken care of. We're going to run it through an EQ, with the frequency up to about 4.5, with nice high boost and nice wide Q. Let's take a listen to it without that. And with. Maybe it up. And that really brings up the higher end since the mids are already very prominent. And lastly, we're going to add an RV7000 advanced reverb to the mixer here. And we're going to change it to Space Echo 1 mode. If we dial it in quite a lot, about a half that is, and take a listen, we can the decay down. This just adds another echoey reverb to the sound, which makes it even bigger sounding. And there, that's our first pad created. Let's move on to part 2 for some stringy goodness.